Sylvan Horn Beast King Magnolia is a deck that focuses on having a full board and having 6 attacks, because you can give your back row the ability to attack from the back row. This unit here has one ability that says at the end of the battle that this unit attacked, you may counterblast 1, choose one of your rear guards, and until the end of that turn, that unit can attack from the back row and gets 5k power. However, if you persona row this turn, you can choose 3 rear guards instead. Magnolia has an upgraded version here in the Sylvan Horn Beast Emperor, Magnolia Elder. This one has 2 skills. First one says when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, choose a card from your soul and you may call it to Rearguard Circle. And then it has a skill where, continuous, if you have 1 or more cards in your soul or on Rearguard Circle with Magnolia in their card names, all of your rearguards can attack and intercept from the back row and get 5k power. This specific build that we'll be talking about today is a build that I built together with my fiance for BSF, and it has 2 main philosophies. Number 1 being trying to rush your opponent early so that by the time you ride Elder they're already within kill range, and 2 being able to fill up the board really easily without having to use too many cards from hand. We accomplish this by the use of orders, particularly the Frozen Resentment, which lets you mill your deck in order to hit targets from your deck that can show up on board after you ride. Specifically the Godot here that can actually power up your Elder or your Magnolia to make it a lot stronger. And finally using something like the Headhunter to try and get that early aggression, plus the fact that it gets 5k whenever you activate an order that turn. Quick replay here using this deck against Chronojet. Starting hand is not looking the best, so we're just going to go ahead and throw all of that back. Managed to get a Magnolia Elder, which is really nice, but no order. We're going to go ahead and flip and actually go second here. So the Chronojet player is just going to do Chronojet things real quick, draw their card, play their crest. We're going to draw into another Elder, which kind of sucks, but we're just going to go ahead and discard the Alpin here. And I thought about it for a bit and went ahead and gambled, managed to get the order, which is really nice, as well as the goat. And we're going to go ahead and rush down a little bit here with the Rogue Headhunter, get just another goat in hand, which is actually pretty nifty for this coming turn here. So we're going to see the GG come down, going to be able to draw 2 cards on the Chronojet side, as well as use the Glimmer Breath, Steam Breath to get a Chronojet from deck here. They're going to throw down the Sargon and the Swirler here to try and do the grade 1 rush. We're going to be able to guard with our goat. We're going to have to let this attack go through, so they are going to get the soul here, but we do manage to hit a draw trigger, which is pretty nifty, as it can stop us from getting hit here. We're going to block the attack on our Rogue Headhunter here with a goat. So now we have 2 goats and soul, which is pretty good. We're going to let that go, but I want to use the Headhunter here to try and get a little bit more sort of aggression in a defensive way to get rid of some of these grade 1s. We're going to draw and ride into our Black Tears Husk Dragon, use a skill to get the Frozen Resentment, and immediately use it to Soul Blast 1. Look at the top 3 cards of the deck. I believe it was just like all triggers, so I chose not to discard anything, and then instead we just bring back the Alpin here. We're going to get +5 on the Rogue Headhunter, so it's actually going to be 13. We're going to get rid of that Swirler so we don't have to deal with it, and then just swing it with Alpin and the Black Tears Husk Dragon, check another Frozen Resentment, and end our turn with that. Looking now at the hand, the Chronojet player did not start the best, to be honest, so not able to guard, and already pushed to 3, which is exactly where we want them to be typically, so that all of our extra attacks, while we're not so much focusing on so much power, we're just focusing on maximum amount of attacks, will actually be more lethal later on. Chronojet going first can't do much, so they're just going to go ahead and use the skill of the grade 2 to Soul Blast, pull out the ball in from deck, put the GG back to keep her safe, and then just swing in here with 21 to the Alpin here to not give us more counter blast. We already have the 1 counter blast, so I don't know if that really mattered, but we're just going to let that go. They're going to get the heal trigger, which is going to put them down to 2, as well as the Steam Breath to be able to have more strike fodder for next turn, as well as use the Sargon since they did hit. Actually, I did just realize that that's illegal. Sargon's only when you hit a Vanguard, but that's fine, doesn't matter. We're going to draw here. We're going to get yet another Elder, which we're going to discard here. We're going to use the skill of Goat to go from drop in to Soul and give Magnolia 5k on ride. Then we're going to Soul Blast out that same goal to look at the top 3. and put an inlet pulse from the top 3 to the drop in order to call out the same goat to the back row. Since we played in order here, now the Rogue Headhunter gets another 13k, so it could actually swing in here and poke. And swing into the Chronojet, as will the inlet pulse, which is going to go through and check the defensive critical trigger, which is going to put this at 23, so it's no longer so much of a difficult guard now since we're at 18. Chronojet player is actually going to go with the 2 to pass here, which does not get broken through, but we do manage to use a skill of Magnolia to let the Godot attack from the back row here. And that is going to go through again, since we have the hand here that is pretty clogged up on the Chronojet side, but we did manage to draw 1 from the goat and draw 1 from the inlet pulse, so we're looking pretty good here. They're going to draw and go into their Fate Rider, use the skill of the Chronojet to put the Rogue Headhunter to the bottom of the deck here, draw a card from the Ballin, and actually draw into the Elementia Sanctitude, which is actually useful against Magnolia because it is a grade 4 deck. Not the best attack pattern here, so they're going to use the Ballin as an attacker, then use the skill of the Sargon to put it into Soul here, and then the skill of the Sargon is still active on the Vanguard here. And then swing in as they call out the Glimmer Breath. We're going to let this go through. Unfortunately, they are going to check the over trigger, which is going to give them a crit here and 10k power for the rest of the game. They put the 100 million over here on the Ballin. They're going to swing in here. We're going to be able to guard the attack as they put the dragon back and then are able to get the GG to get a much better hand than what they had before and swing with the 100 million here. I gave it a lot of thought here, but decided to just end up taking it. Unfortunately, we did hit the heal trigger and we do not heal. We're going to stand and draw here right into Magnolia Elder. Since we have 2 goats in drop, we can put 1 into Soul, pull it out with Magnolia Elder skill to put the other one into Soul to give Magnolia Elder 5k power for each, making it 23. Then after that, we're going to go ahead and throw down the Inlet Pulse and use the skill of the Frozen Resentment to look at the top 3, put a Rogue Headhunter to drop, and then call out the goat that we so blasted onto the board, as well as throw out an Alpin to have a pretty sizable attack here. They're going to be able to guard the first attack with a draw trigger, use the Elementia Sanctitude for the Magnolia attack. We only check a critical trigger, which we put on the back row center Godot here. The Alpin we're going to use first to attack with it, since it gets +2 for every 2 grade 2 or greater units on board. If we use it after the Godot, it doesn't really matter, but typically you want to attack with Alpin first because the Godot can disappear in the middle of the battle phase, so this can lose power. If I had another grade 2 here, grade 2 or greater, this would have actually ended up being 30k. So just something to take note here, but we're going to swing in here. Chronojet player is going to block that with the heal guard. We're going to swing in here with another 25k. They're going to take that, pushing them to 23, and swing in here with the 35 and the crit, which is going to force them to guard with the PG. And we're going to put the Godot in drop and then put the Impulse in Soul in order to draw, unfortunately, 2 draw triggers. They're going to go into their Fate Rider again, bot deck our goat, which has been unfortunate because we don't have another one in rotation, and get their massive swings here. We're going to be able to block the first attack here as they do their thing and pull out a Sargon here. Swing in with the massive Vanguard swing and get the 4th attack here. We believe the PG here, discard the Maple to put them to drop. They do have the crit and the power from the over trigger that they checked, but they have a dry check from here. They're going to swing in here with 38. We're not going to be able to guard that, so we're going to take it, and it's going to push us to 23 here as they swing in now with a massive 66. Another attack that we just cannot guard, so we're just going to go ahead and PG with the draw trigger and discard that. We're going to go into an Elder again, put in the 1 goat. From drop into Soul, give Magnolia just 5k and call it out. Then Maple is going to trigger since we rolled a grade 3 or greater this turn. We'll Soul Blast out the Inlet Pulse here to get out an Alpin. I was thinking of bringing another Inlet Pulse, but I figured we should try and end it this turn, so we're going to use the Alpin for the power. We'll poke in with the Maple and then swing in with the Elder here. They're going to be able to guard for, I believe, a 2 to pass here. I did check a critical trigger, but I decided to give it to the power to the Alpin, and the crit later on will be applied to the back row Godot because I had forgot about it. And here we're going to check a heal trigger, so we could have broken through 1 there. Actually, no, I gave it back here to the Alpin, so we're going to swing here with the massive 35, and that's actually going to be the game because they just did not have enough to guard. This was only, I think, 33. So a bit of a lucky game on my part because the Chronojet player did not get everything they needed and kind of bricked with like some grade 3s and stuff, but I did kind of show off what the deck can do, cycling goats, getting Magnolia strong, recursion from drop, being able to rush early, so on and so forth. Starting off with the ride deck, we have the Sylvan Beast Lottie here. You don't have to use the Sylvan Beast, you can use whatever you'd like. In the grade 1, we've got the Ranker Chain, who says act, Soul Blast 1, draw 2 cards, choose 1 order from your hand and discard it, or if you don't have an order, you choose 2 cards from your hand and discard it. Then we have the Black Tears Husk Dragon, who says on ride on Vanguard Circle, you can choose a normal order specifically from your drop added to hand, so you can't discard like the Elementia Sanctitude and add it back to your hand. And finally, of course, we have the Sylvan Beast King Magnolia Elder. For the grade 4s here, we're only playing these grade 4s, which are of course 4 copies of the Sylvan Beast Emperor Magnolia Elder. For the grade 3s, we're playing 3 copies of the Inlet Pulse Dragon and a single copy of the Usurp Dragon. Usurp Dragon might go up to 1 given how set 10 is looking like. The Inlet Pulse Dragon here is only at 3 because you don't loop Inlet Pulse as much as you do with Elder as you did back in the day. You also can't rely on this slow looping as much as you'd like. Typically, you'd rather loop the Godot instead, which means Inlet Pulse doesn't get called out as much as you'd like unless you happen to have an order. For the grade 2s, we have a copy of Maple, as well as a copy of the Spurn Maiden Eileen. Then we have 3 copies of the Sylvan Beast Alpin, and 4 copies of Sylvan Beast Godot here. Godot has a skill where if it's on drop and you ride a Magnolia, you can put this card into Soul if you don't already have a copy in your Soul, and then your Vanguard gets plus 5k. Also, when it's in the back row and it attacks, it gets 10k, but also if it's in the back row center, at the end of that battle, you can retire it and draw a card. So these 2 guys can combo up to give you a lot of cards in hand. Typically, what you want to do is whenever you ride the Elder, you want to put in a goat into Soul, then activate the skill of Elder to call out that goat from your Soul. Then if you have another goat in your drop, you can activate that goat again since there's no goat in your Soul and you're still triggering the ride, and put into Soul to give Elder a total of 23k and triple drive that turn, which is insanely strong. I tried to do the same thing with Magnolia. You can give it up to 18, but there's no way to Soul Blast it out in main phase unless you play the grade 2 Lattice, which does mean that you will be able to get a free call and then also Soul Blast out a goat to then activate another goat to put into Soul to give your Vanguard 23k on your first grade 3 turn, which is pretty good. For grade 1s, we're playing 3 copies of the Rogue Headhunter and 4 copies of the Unit PGs. We're not playing the Elementia Sanctitude. I've seen some decks play it to try and use it if you go first or second, depending on what deck you're going up against. You can't use it once you're on Elder, so it becomes useless. You're better off playing the Unit PGs. These just say whenever you use them to guard, you can have a unit not get hit for that battle, and to pay the cost, you have to discard. But if you only have 1 or less cards in your hand, you don't have to discard. The Rogue Headhunter is used in combination with the fact that we're playing orders in order to be able to get some early aggression early, because it does get 5k whenever you activate an order that turn. Or I should say, if you activate an order, it doesn't get it continuously. For the orders, we're going to be playing 4 copies of Frozen Resentment and 2 copies of Spiritual Body Condensation. These 2 orders kind of do the same thing. Soul Blast 1, choose a unit from your drop and call it. This one gives that unit 5k. This one lets you look at top 3 cards from your deck and choose 1 to discard if you want, and then you choose something from your drop and call it. The reason we're playing Max Resentment is to try and get these guys into drop, as well as thin out our deck so we can hit some triggers on the triple drive here. For the triggers, we're playing 4 of the effect criticals. You don't have to play the effect ones specifically because you rarely use the effect to put them into Soul. 3 of the dog from the Leonorn trial deck, you have to play these specifically because they're really cute. 4 of the effect draw triggers. While there are some times that this deck is close to decking out from cycling these 2 cards, as well as Frozen Resentment and the triple drive, you need the draws early on to make sure you can actually get into that late game plus engine. We're playing 4 of the normal heal triggers here. You're welcome to try out the critical triggers here now that we're in set 10, and they're a lot more useful, or the critical heal triggers I should say. And then we're playing, of course, the Bless Favor as the over trigger, just because this is very good in most of Strike Camp. It's pretty good in Magnolia because it gives your front row 10k power, gives you a crit, and also lets you draw 2 cards as well as heal. When we get the red and the blue over triggers, you can very easily choose the red over trigger because it lets you choose something like a Ganosa, have Ganosa attack twice and balance its power twice, which is insanely good. There's a time when I tested it out, I actually managed to draw a Ganosa from the drive check and then call it out after I hit the red over trigger to then give it the 100 million attack and bounce that around. The blue overtrigger is decent because it lets you get an Elder or something from drop and then give something a crit, which is okay. I think the red one is a little bit better. Obaria, not as great. It does give 2 units 100 million, but unless you're playing like multiple copies of Gnosla, I feel like the Blessed Flavor is pretty good for now. Again, the general theme and focus of this deck is trying to make Elder your kill turn. Typically, you can't last as long to ride multiple Elders, get this looping engine going. Everything scales way too high for you to rely on that. So you want to just try and get as aggressive as possible by using stuff like the Rogue Headhunter and your orders to get a presence early, and then using your units that can recur from drop to just always have a board and ready to get as many 6 attacks turns as you can, and then using these guys to make sure you can draw them to other cards, as well as being able to guard. I don't think this is the best version of Magnolia or the best version of this sort of playstyle, but I think it is the best mindset to go into set 10 building Elder. But I think given some of the set 10 cards and just some more playtesting, we can probably make this build a little bit better. We have a lot of options today, so we're going to go through this rather quickly. In terms of the ride deck, you can try playing stuff like the green Deco in order to use the tokens to rush down your opponent. However, I think the orders and just basically the ranker chain allowing you to dig through the deck earlier to make sure you get Magnolia Elder, more importantly, is a little bit better than having the tokens. I experimented a little bit with using Lattice in the grade 2 in combination with the ranker chain. The main reason being to use Lattice to Soul Blast out, look at the top card of the deck, possibly put it to hand or play it on board, and then also being able to get double activation of Godot using this, because you can put Godot into Soul after riding Magnolia, use this skill to Soul Blast out that same Godot, and then if you have another Godot in drop, you can put it again into Soul, meaning you start out with 23k. It's an option that maybe we'll come back and visit it in set 10, but for now it was a little bit not as much of a plus, and also missing out the order sucks. Speaking on the topic of recursion, there is of course the Rope Imprisoned Dragon, which was played in an earlier version. We've messed it around with in Magnolia, it worked out pretty well, and might come back to it now in set 10, but for now stuff like the Usurp Dragon and the Maple seem to work out better. We always come back to the Coffin Shooter, just because it does let you work similar to a Maple without that much of a restriction, but the Soul Blast is kind of nice as well, considering you can take out one of your goats from your soul, but it is just a vanilla 10k, so sometimes Maple is just better just because it's free. Instead of the Elenia, you can try playing the Diantha, who kind of does the same thing but is locked to grade 3. Doesn't Soul Blast, which kind of sucks, but can call grade 3 or greater, and it does get 5k if you have another grade 1, but that means you're playing a bunch of grade 1s, Alpin might not be as strong. Finally, for the Sylvan Horn version of Recursion, we have Panthero. Panthero is okay, it's just all the other cards are a little bit easier to set up, they just have to be in drop. Whereas with Panthero, you not only have to have other copies in drop, but then find a way to play this copy as well. So I could just ride into Elder, get cards from drop with their skills, or I can dig and have this in drop and then play another copy of this to call out those copies from drop while also playing Soul Blast 1. So it's a little bit, you know, here and there. In terms of power, it's basically the same thing, but it does kind of suck that early on it doesn't do anything. Impix is a card that might see more play coming into set 10. The only thing I don't like about Impix specifically is I feel like you're better off just trying to get stuff back rather than trying to prevent stuff from being retired, especially since there's stuff like the Meteor Flare, I think it's called, that can just remove the resist from this, so unfortunately it won't be as great, but you know, we go back and forth with Impix, so we'll have to see how it works in set 10. I feel like in set 9 it wasn't as useful since there wasn't as much retire or control, so the other approach is definitely a lot better. Gnosla is a unit that's sort of hard to make work right now, just because of the sheer fact that it'll easily get retired, so it's hard to rely on. So this build specifically is just focusing on trying to get units on board as consistently as possible, rather than just trying to get something that gives you more power. I think Gnosla will be a little bit better once we can give Gnosla a little bit more power easily. Passing over 15k is decent, but swinging in with 15k the first time isn't as much. Baljo Corn here is a pretty decent tech option. You can counterblast 1, and from the back row it's going to attack all of your opponent's front row units, so you can very easily deal with the Eva, for example, you're able to clear up its obfuscates in one fell swoop. It can also be used just in general as like a removal option, just because it attacks all of your opponent's units, so it can be kind of annoying to some decks, but right now we kind of ran out of space for it, but I think it is always a very good card to have. Finally, we have these 3 counterblast orders here that you're more than welcome to play. The Wild Intelligence is a pretty decent option because it does work with the mill playstyle. It's just that this specific build was focusing on just keeping damage low early, which is why this wasn't necessarily played, because you need 2 counterblasts on your turn 2 to make this, or sorry, turn 3 to make this actually work out for the best. Also, sometimes, you know, our hits aren't so bad, so we kind of don't like that card as much. This is sort of a new version of Wild Intelligence that doesn't really let you call out as many cards, but it lets you look at top 5, but you do put everything into drop. I feel like this is a bit too risky. And then the Cloud Miasma is a pretty simple card that's just counterblast 1 consulting from drop. So it is a soulless version of Spiritual Body. Just doesn't give the 5k, so it's just kind of nice to have different options sometimes, but I think Spiritual Body and Frozen Resentment are the best ways to go. And the last order we'll talk about here is the Fine Drink of Abolishment for Sins. This just says Soul Blast 1, draw a card, choose one of your units, and it gets 5k. To the end of the battle for each order with a different card name in your drop and bind zone in total. This is a Blitz order. I've seen this used a lot in a lot of overseas lists, and I believe the main purpose of it is just to get your goats out of the soul, specifically on your first grade 3 turn, or specifically later on. Of course, this doesn't work with this specific build because we only play the same type of orders, but if you play a sort of more Highlander approach to your orders, this might not be so bad, just to get you the shield value, draw cards, and also get your goats out of soul so you can use them next turn. This deck is specifically built for set 9, but I had a little bit of a delay getting this out in time before set 10 came out. I haven't changed the build for set 10 just yet, because I haven't messed around with it in set 10, since set 10 just came out, but we do have a game here against Gandeeva to see how that works out. Of course, Gandeeva being possibly one of the worst matchups for Magnolia, but we'll see how this goes. My starting hand is actually pretty comfortable considering I have a lot of discard fodder. I decided to risk it here again, and I managed to get lucky again and managed to use the skill of the Rancor Chain to Soul Blast 1 and get the order to discard. Otherwise, I would just discard both the goats and not have this great discard fodder going further. Gandeeva is going to go ahead and draw for going second, and then draw get the shield using the buff Saga Ride just to have that as discard fodder. We're going to guard the first attack here. We want to stay on low damage early so we can deal with the high damage later. We're going to go into the Black Tears Husk Dragon here, discarding our goat, and then use the skill of the Black Tears Husk Dragon to get back the Frozen Resentment that we discarded from Rancor Chain, and immediately use it to Soul Blast out that Rancor Chain. Look at the top 3 here. Managed to get a Rogue Headhunter from the top 3. We're going to pitch that and then bring it back. It's going to get plus 5k, so she played an order this turn. We're going to throw in our extra goat here just to get some aggression. They're going to no guard, and luckily for us, we got a critical trigger here, which means we get to push 2 damage, but also get a really strong column on the right side here, as you'll see. They're actually going to take a heal and then a critical trigger, so 2 defensives, but they still can get threatened by this 33k attack thanks to the 10k power from the trigger, and then the Rogue Headhunter being 13k booster. Since Gandeeva's slightly piece defiant and you don't want to use too many pieces, they're going to actually take the attack here and actually get pushed to 3, which is the best case scenario. Granted, I did get really lucky here, but hey, that's just how things go, right? So they're going to go ahead and discard the Cycle card, use its skill to Soul Blast, put it to the bottom of the deck and draw a card. And they're going to decide not to give us Counterblast here and instead just swing into the goat, which I let go through. So we don't have any Counterblast this turn here, but we're going to discard the draw trigger going to Magnolia, put the goat in soul anyways just to get the extra plus 5. We get the Rotting Usurped Dragon from our drop since we wrote a Great Beard Greater. And we're going to use the Spiritual Body. I accidentally Soul Blasted out the Black Tears Husk Dragon, so we're going to put that back and then just call out the goat again, because I know if it gets retired, that is fine, but it does give me a 15k body on board that maybe I can intercept with, but again, this is Gandeeva, so it's going to get retired, which means it's going to end up in the drop anyway, so we can bring it out here. And we're just going to go ahead and push somewhat basic turn. They're going to guard with the heal trigger here. We're going to swing in with Magnolia. They're going to guard with a front trigger, the effect front trigger. We're going to check some blanks here, and then swing in with a nice 26k, what they're going to take. We're going to go ahead and pass turn on that. They're going to ride into Gandeeva. First, use the skill of the Cycle card to draw. Then they're going to use the Best Harvest here. So whenever they retire a card, they get to draw 1. And then they're going to use the skill of Gandeeva here to select 3 of our units. Unfortunately, it's 1 of each grade, but the Gandeeva player is going to be able to hit a 1, a 2, and a 3 here, which means they're actually able to retire a whole board. Then, thanks to the best harvest, they can draw a card whenever a rearguard is retired. Plus, thanks to Gandeeva, they can bind a card from their drop thanks to a rearguard being retired, which they're going to do here, draw cards, and then go ahead and use the skill Gandeeva to bind 3 cards. They're going to play down the multi-attack guy as well as the other retire card, the grade 2 that says Counterblast Retire, and if you don't retire, draw a card and bind one of your cards from drop here. So pretty typical Gandeeva turn here. We've got the grade 1 in the back row to boost. Then they're going to apply the effect of Gandeeva's ability here, where it's continuous, but they decided to do it here, where the front row gets 2k plus for every 2 of your cards in the bind zone. We're going to guard the first attack here. Gandeeva is going to swing in, which is then going to trigger the effect of the grade 1 to countercharge and bind itself, and then the grade 2 is going to trigger to counter blast and bind itself to look at the top 5 cards of the deck and then play it out here. They're going to just get the cycle card here. But this does mean that the Gandeeva, now that there are 10 or more cards in bind, they're going to actually get an additional critical. So we're going to just let this go since we have no damage. We're going to check 2 triggers, luckily enough for us, so they're going to have to pass turn on that as they didn't check anything and their power wasn't big enough. We're going to go into Elder, use the skill of Goat to put Goat into Soul, then pull out Goat with the skill of Elder, and then put another Goat into Soul, giving Magnolia a total of 23k, and we're going to use the Rotting Usurp Dragon to bring it back from drop, and then use the Frozen Resentment to Soul Blast out the Goat, and then look at another Rogue Headhunter from the top 3 and Soul Blast, or put that to drop. We're going to call out a Goat from drop, and then we're going to play the Alpin here to get some decent damage here. We're going to swing in first with 18 from the Rotting Dragon. They're going to just intercept with their 2 grade 2s. Let's swing with an Elder here. They're going to guard with the PG. We're going to get 2 critical triggers here and a Goat. So pretty lucky on our end so far. We're going to swing with the Goat first for the 25. They're going to guard that with 28. Swing in with Alpin, who's going to get the plus 10 for 35 and the crit that we put on it. They're going to guard for 43. And then finally, I'll swing with the Goat, who also has 35 and a crit, but they're going to guard that with the over trigger. We're going to retire the Goat here to draw 1. They're going to Persona Ride Gandeeva and play the Best Harvest again. Use the skill of Best Harvest here to counterblast 1, select all of our units here. By the way, I did realize afterwards that I used the skill of Gandeeva wrong on the other side, because it says counterblast 1. Choose 5 of your opponent's rearguards with different grades. Reveal the top 5 of your deck. Retire all of the chosen units with the same grades as any of the revealed cards. So if I choose grade 3 and 2, I can't choose another 2, and I can only retire if from the 2 that I chose if it's the same grade. Take that for what you will. And reveal the top 5. They're actually just going to reveal grade 1s and 2, but since they hit a 2, that does mean that we lose the Alpin and the Goat there. And we get to draw 2 cards from the skill of Best Harvest. Then they're going to use the grade 2 here, Rugant, to retire our Rotting Usurp Dragon. And since all of these cards were retired this turn, you can bind now cards from drop. Then they're going to draw 1 from the Best Harvest. They're going to play the multi-attacker again here. And they're going to go ahead and apply the power of basically Gandeeva's Crest, who's going to give it also a crit. They're going to swing in with a huge 38k. I'm going to choose to guard this early before the power gets any greater as the Gandeeva attacks, and then the grade 2 multi-attacker binds itself, looks at tops 5, and fortunately the only option there is yet again the cycle card. Which is going to be pretty huge because now the front row has a huge plus 30k altogether. So we're going to go ahead and PG this. We're going to discard our draw trigger because we want to keep the Goat for trying to attack next turn. They do manage to check a critical trigger, which means now they have a huge 50k column, which we're going to take. Hit the heal trigger here. We're going to guard the next attack here with the over trigger just so we don't get pushed to 5. And they're going to use the skill of the grade 1 to bind itself and draw a card since something was retired this turn and it's at the end of the attack that it boosted. We're going to draw into a Frozen Resentment, which will ride into Elder, use the skill of Goat to put into Soul, use the skill of Elder to pull out Goat, use the skill of Goat to put into Soul. We're going to bring back the Rotting Usurp Dragon and use the Frozen Resentment to Soul Blast out the Goat. Look at top 3, mill a Inlet Pulse, and then we're going to call out our Godot here. I decided to go with the keep calling it Impix, with the inlet. I guess I'm thinking because Impix would be good in this matchup. We're going to call it the inlet pulse here just because I think I can survive another turn, but I don't think I can close it out, considering Gandeeva had the 8 cards in hand. So we're just going to go a little bit slow here. Everyone's going to get 5k from Magnolia Elder, so we're going to swing in with the Usurp Dragon. Again, they're going to double intercept. Swing in with Inlet Pulse, they're going to guard with the Heal Guard. Swing in with Elder, unfortunately it's going to get blocked by the Elementia Sanctitude. And we're also going to have a bunch of blank checks, so we're going to swing in here for 25, swing in for 25 again with the other Goat. They're going to guard for 28. We're going to retire our Goat, draw a card, and then put Inlet Pulse into Soul and pass turn on that. They did not manage to get a Persona Ride this turn, but they did get the Best Harvest yes again. They decided to play out their cards here, and I guess they realized that they only have the 1 counterblast, so they kind of played the Best Harvest for no reason. So they're just going to go into the battle phase here and just swing in with the multi-attacker, choosing to prioritize that over the retire. I decided to guard this. They're going to actually use the skill to counterblast itself, counterblast and bind itself. Look at the top 5, call out the Psycho card yet again, and then swing in here. Since we have an extra card in bind, everything's going to get a bunch of extra power. Gandeeva still has the crit. We're going to guard this attack first with the PG. Discard the Inlet Pulse. They're going to be able to heal, unfortunately. So we're just going to have to take these 2 next attacks here. And we don't get another Elder, so we just throw out the Alpin here and just swing and hope for the best. They're going to use the front trigger here, as well as I think the Heal Guard, to make this a no pass. Yep. But we're just going to check a draw trigger, which is cute, and just check an Elder after that, drawing a Godot. We're going to swing in, they're going to double intercept from our Roaring Usurp Dragon yet again, and then we are going to swing in here with the Godot for just 25. They're going to take that damage to give them the Counterblast. I stopped for a second and think if it was worth just counterblast denying them here. In hindsight, that might have been the better play, but I saw they only had really three cards in hand, so there's a good chance that maybe this massive attack from Alpin could have maybe closed out the game here, but they did manage to have just enough to guard and still have an extra card in hand. So this is actually going to be the last turn of the match here, because they're not going to be able to do much but play out the grade 1 and use the skill here to retire. Basically, I think our whole board with the top 5, but if they had the multi-attacker, you know, the Counterblast would have mattered more. Retiring the board does mean that I lose out on an extra 10k shield, but I don't think it matters in this situation, considering Gandeeva is going to bind 2 extra cards here from their drop, and I think they're at like 22 or something like that, so this is going to be 37. We're going to try and PG this, discard the Spiritual Body since it has no shield value, and then they're going to attack here with the 32, which we can't guard. If I had the extra 10k shields, I would have gone up to the 23 that I had from applying it from the crit there. Then I would have had the extra 10, so I would have 33, so I actually would have been able to guard this. So had I just Counterblast denied them, they would not have been able to go off this turn. But who knows if we would have won this next turn, it kind of all depends. I did have the Elder and the Goat, but yeah.